And good morning and welcome to LRP exclusive. We are Antoine-less today. He's taking a day of rest and recuperation. So I'm Don Clark, joined by Dr. Eric Clopton with Cosmopolitan Community Church. And you know her, you love her, you've seen her 5,000 times already on LRP Network.
I agree with this.
We got to start paying you now. Tasha Clopton, Media Director with Cosmopolitan Community Church. And we're also going to be joined in a little bit by Pastor Hunter with Grace Baptist Church in Chicago. There's a number of topics that we want to talk about this morning, but the first one, really the main one that we wanted to get everybody together again, was discussing how things have moved on now that we're in another phase in Chicago, and how everything is moving along with Cosmopolitan Community Church. Pastor, if you'd like to start. Just want to, how has Tasha had mentioned too that a lot of the parishioners are older.
Yes.
So as far as embracing a new technology for them to be able to be a part of the church, did it get easier as it went along?
I think it's gotten easier. My concern, at least right now, is I want to push them further. But there's always that thing in the background where how are they gonna revert once we do go back to regular service? And I don't think that's just maybe my concern, but also the concerns of a lot of pastors. I've gotten several of our members, they say, hey, I enjoy Sunday morning. I can drink my coffee, hang in my jammies and watch service, and I can digitally give and worship and run around the house. They said, Pastor, it's going to be a struggle to get dressed and have to drive again.
I guess. I mean, it's like, you never really thought about that, but it's just like working from home.
Yeah.
It's like, people are, well, wait a minute, that's what you wore?
Yeah.
And you're really going to wear that to church? So yeah, it's, you got that going on.
We've experienced it. I actually wanted this coming Sunday so we've tried to keep some of our traditional programs in place. So we traditionally have a Women's Day service once a year. And so we did a mass mailing and we mailed out some ribbons to the women. Traditionally the women have specific colors that they're supposed to wear, and some other artifacts. So we've requested that the women dress in the Women's Day colors, wear the ribbons and the various things, and then send us a photo of what they're wearing. And they're gonna, once they send the photos in, our media ministry is gonna do some things. They didn't know what
What are you planning on doing with it?
I knew. I was aware. There's a slew of photos in the church email. I'm ready. My mother sent me her. She kept saying, who am I supposed to send my picture to? And I was like, remember that time y'all mortgaged the house for me to go to school? Yeah, me. I'm the media director.
But those individuals, they were saying, oh, that means I have to get dressed.
Right. Just a little sticking point.
Please don't just put on your ribbon in your pajamas.
Right, exactly.
Yeah, so those sorts of things. And then another piece that I was looking at yesterday, which caused a whole nother train of thought. The young lady who heads the disease information here for the city of Chicago. I was reading some of her recommendations regarding church worship, and one of her recommendations was that worshipers stay out an entire year.
Really?
Yeah, see, you had the same look I had.
Yeah.
And so in the back of my mind, I'm the pastor of the church, and I've got the church itself, and I want to meet our membership face to face as well, and a lot of them want to come in, but then there's always that safety factor.
Is that the juggling that has gotten to the point now where people that we've had on, whether it's with churches or whether it's with organizations, or yesterday we were talking with some people from along the South Shore Convention and Visitors Bureau that we're going to be airing soon. nobody really had, and I think we mentioned this the first time that we talked, nobody really had a playbook for this. Nobody
Right.
really had, there was no crystal ball for this. So the juggling effect kicked in around April for the events that were going on in the spring. And everybody said, well, you know, by the time summer rolls around, we'll have a better handle
Right.
on things. And that hasn't happened.
No, it's all out the window. And then, you know, for me, the pastor, our business is people.
Mm-hmm.
And so, you know, this isn't our strain. A lot of churches have been opening. I think it's more been a more of an economic decision because they needed people, you know, out of sight, out of mind.
Right.
So they needed a certain amount of income coming in so that they could support ministry and do the things that they do. That's not necessarily our case, but you know, people. We did something for our graduates, a celebration for our 2020 graduates. We did a driving celebration.
Mm-hmm.
It was outside. It was safe, practice social distancing and other things. And our members, the joy, it was great to see. Everybody saw each other and it was like a family reunion. You know, and then you think, okay, a year? How you
Right.
You know, that's a big weight, you know, but then you think in your head, traditionally churches started from home.
Mm-hmm.
That's how ministry really started. They didn't have these big buildings. So, but you know, there's always that people factor, that connection you want to make.
And as a media director, what you had to do with the church, I mean, you've got so many other connections that you have to make. You must have seen the same thing that Dr. Clopton saw, that there was a relief. People, I can see people now.
Exactly. So with that particular instance he's talking about, when we did the drive-by celebration for the graduates, what I was able to capture and able to see was the joy in people's faces. Of course, they were happy for the graduates,
Right.
but they were equally as excited to see each other. We couldn't hug, we couldn't greet, but the excitement was still there, the enthusiasm was still there, and so it shone across during that video.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, I remember going out. Teresa and I had to get out of the house. It had gotten to that point. It was right at the end of May, and we went out to the Indiana Dunes Lakeshore,
Okay.
out to the national park, just to walk around a little bit, and it was like, wow, people. You know, it was just it felt foreign for a minute, and that. Because of it being a church and because of the spirituality that's needed, I mean, did you see? Was it more of a jump? I can't wait anymore. I got to get back. I got to get back. And
That was some of it, but then you know, it was just the people want to be near each other. Part of the connection that I've experienced. We have certain seniors at our church, and not just seniors. But people that live alone, they may not have immediate family.
Mm-hmm.
Immediate family maybe have passed on, maybe live other parts of the country, or they don't see them. And Sunday, there's a way of connecting.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm talking about, you wouldn't know how much you need it unless you don't have it.
Right. Exactly. That's what I mean.
And so they, you know, some of our seniors, they don't see anybody. They're stuck at home.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, on Sundays, they know I'm gonna connect. I'm gonna relate. I'm going to, you know, worship. Yes, you can do it anywhere, but there's something about being in the environment.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's just a whole nother level. And then, like I said, so as a pastor, all that's on my mind: the connection, the people. But then also, when you're seeing the upticks right now in the various states, in Florida. Texas, Arizona, all of these places that opened too early because they thought of the economics as opposed to the people. You know,
You almost have to wonder why somebody would go there.
it's a
But
reality.
that's another topic. But yeah, it's, you know, when you take a look at the rise going on in Florida, and again, you're dealing with a number of elderly, older Americans that are there. Does it get to the point where I'm not going to worry about it? I'm just going to go. I just got to go.
That's what sometimes you may feel that,
Right.
but then you got to look at, okay, you have to look at the reality of the situation. I don't want anyone to be ill or even make their transition on my watch, because I made a decision that was based on emotion, as opposed to I want the spiritual piece. We believe in healing. We believe in the power of prayer, but God also, he put science in place for a reason. The two, they can work hand in hand, and so you got to find a balance.
Well, that's the trick, isn't it?
Right, that's
Right.
it. It's a delicate balance. The other piece is, in addition to the delicate balance, you want to make sure that there's no uptick on your watch. And because if you look at it, I know of one individual, a pastor, very healthy. He caught the coronavirus. He passed away. But then also one of his members had the same coronavirus, had all these medical issues, recovered. So there's no rhyme or reason.
No, it is an equal opportunity.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. We're going to take a real quick break. We're going to be joined by Pastor Hunter from Grace Baptist Church. Want to again welcome Dr. Eric Clopton and Tasha Clopton from Cosmopolitan Community Church. We're going to be back in 2 minutes and 2 seconds. I'm Don Clark, and this is LRP Exclusive. Welcome back to LRP Exclusive. I'm Don Clark. We are Antoine-less today, but without him, we did gain 3 others, so this works out well. Dr. Eric Clopton is with us, pastor from Cosmopolitan Community Church. Tasha Clopton, media director with Cosmopolitan Community Church. And very proud to welcome Pastor Hunter from Grace Baptist Church in Chicago. Pastor, good morning.
Good morning.
It's good to see you again. I hope everything is happy and healthy on your end.
Well, we are healthy. We're not so happy.
Not so happy. Okay.
Deaths that we see in Chicago, and we want to pray and ask God to help us to come up with a way to kind of reduce that.
It has been, we mentioned when you were on the phone with me this morning when we first contacted, what's happened over the past couple of days. And so I thought to be able to have you on, along with Pastor Clopton and with Tasha. I don't know within 20 minutes if we're going to have a solution, obviously, but there is a discussion that can be made on what's happened in Chicago, again, over the past 48 hours. And I think that,
Yes.
I think that's...
I just kind of want to make a correction.
Okay.
Sounds like we got a little delay. I was saying I wanted to make a correction. My church is Grace Memorial.
Grace Memorial, okay. We are running into a little bit of an issue here with the internet. Pastor Hunter, are you still there?
Yes, sir.
Okay. You can continue.
Oh, I was just saying the name of my church, Grace Memorial Baptist Church. We're in North Lawndale on the west side.
Okay. And with what has happened, there are a number of circumstances, I'm sure, that are contributing to what we've seen this past weekend. You hear a lot of, well, it's this, well, it's that, but the issue remains. There's a problem in Chicago, and we need to get the communities together to get a dialogue going on how to fix it, how to control it.
Well, absolutely. I agree wholeheartedly. And yes, there are a lot of extenuating circumstances that is causing the violence that we see that happened, stuff that has been around since long before you and I were even born. But the reality of it is we can't continue to wallow in the past sins and hurts of this country. We must start where we are now to fixing the problem. And the sad part about it is there have been studies and and studies talking about how to prevent exactly what we're dealing with now. And it seems like a minority of people in this country have just ignored it or seem to be happy with not doing anything to fix it. I think that there are some solutions out there. You know, I don't know, we didn't mention that I'm the great uncle of Laquan McDonald. And during the Laquan McDonald trials, the same people that have been involved in many of the riots that have taken place around this country actually reached out to me. I decided not to join forces with them because I thought that some of the things that they were standing for was un-American, and it was just not the core beliefs of what I think this country was founded upon and what we should be doing as Christian people. I think we can disagree without being violently disagreeable, and so I took that path with my family, and thank God that the people of the city of Chicago listened, and we were successful at getting a conviction of a police officer for the murder of my great nephew, Laquan McDonald. However, as we look at where we are in the George Floyd era, there's violence all over the country and in some parts of the world. But to speak about America, in 1967, Lyndon Johnson had commissioned a committee to come together and find out what happened, why it happened, and how to prevent it from ever happening again, which was called the Kerner Report. And in that report, it gave some very direct and significant actions that America could take to prevent exactly what we're dealing with today. And the report warned that it would happen again if we didn't listen. And the Congress that he had at the time and the Senate all smiled and said yes, but the moment that the lights and the cameras went off, they went back to business as usual.
Pastor Hunter, I want to bring this up because the first time that you and I met, it was in my office in Chicago. I believe Kenny Coleman was there, and we spent a good part of the time talking about what was going on at that time in Chicago, which was last summer. But now that we have Pastor Clopton here too, and I'd like to bring this to the two of you, the dialogue that you're having with not only yourselves, but also the congregation that comes in, because you do have to do this on a regular basis. What is the dialogue? What is the positivity that you can give through all of this?
Well, I know personally we come from a biblical perspective.
Yeah.
We definitely have societal things that need to be addressed, but you always have to leave people with hope. There are things that the government can do, but then there are some practical things that we can do as individuals regarding our families, regarding morality, regarding determining right from wrong. I was talking with someone not too long ago, and it scared me when it came to their children. They were letting their children figure out certain things as opposed to telling them right from wrong. And I believe there's certain things, like I said, there's the government piece, there definitely needs to be addressed. But there's some basic things that we can do at our home. And I know some homes may not be your conventional mom, dad, with kids or whatever, but there's some certain things, calling wrong, determining what right is, and this isn't preaching, it isn't forcing some strange ideals, but there's some basic things that we should understand, that taking a life under any circumstances, if your life isn't in danger, is wrong. Being able to get just some basic morality things. They're biblical, but they also will transcend the Bible into everyday life. If some of those things are never addressed, I think that's the reason we are where we are on some level. You know, we have to address. We can't deny the elephant in the room. You know, okay, we rioted. We spoke against the things that happened with George Floyd, but then why aren't we as outraged? There's a small segment that's not outraged over what happened this weekend, the horrors that happened, you know, innocent lives that we're taking. There should be just as much outrage.
If you weren't directly looking at news sites from Chicago or weren't directly looking at social media, you did not know about this, of what happened over the weekend. It really was overshadowed by many different things. But Pastor Hunter, on your end, the dialogue that you have not only with your parishioners but also families that you're in contact with, what is that dialogue?
Well, you're absolutely correct. If you were not listening to the news cycle or social media, or if you didn't live in the community, you wouldn't know. And I agree with Pastor on one point that he said, and that is that, you know, it's a small segment. Well, the problem is one bad apple will spoil the whole bunch. One bad apple will spoil the whole bunch. What I say to my family, and I know you asked me a question, but I had asked one before and I didn't get to respond to it. What I say to my church and my family is I try to get them to understand how we fit in American life. Because at the end of the day, whether you're a Jehovah's Witness or Missionary Baptist or Catholic, you know, whatever your denominational beliefs are, at the end of the day, we live in an America that is a Christian, that is founded on Christian Judeo values. And matter of fact, the Constitution is a draft of the Magna Carta. And if you don't understand it, and you don't understand that, and you don't have any sense of God, then you don't know how to combat, you know, the things that you're being confronted with in this world. Everything is not going to be solved through the law. There are, and that's what I agree with the pastor on, there's some things that we have to solve through morality, through what is just, you know, inherently right to do. And the problem with America is it has lost its soul. We've gone away from what our core beliefs are. We're supposed to be a nation that says it's one nation under God with liberty and justice for all. But we are now trying to go back, talking about make America great again. And the reality of it is, at what period in America's life are you going?
Right.
You're going to go.
Exactly.
At what life are you going to go back to? Because there are some periods in America where they wasn't so great, and they had to fix it and get it right. And God blessed us to do so. And right now, we're in a moment in time where we're going to have to work together and fix it and get it right. People don't hate Americans, our enemies that are outside forces that would like to see this democracy destroyed. Don't hate us because we're black or we're white. They hate us because we've united ourselves under this Constitution that says we're one nation under God. And so we must see that we are stronger together. And that's what I say to my family. That's what I say to my community. We have to unite ourselves and become stronger together. We cannot separate ourselves on the lines of black and white. We cannot separate ourselves on the lines of rich and poor. We must see that each one of us needs each other. And all of us play a role in making this a great country, the great country that it is.
But with where everything is right now, I mean, I remember barely going back to 1968 and what happened in Chicago at the time. I was living just north of Milwaukee. I remember Father Grappi with the marches in Milwaukee. What happened in Detroit, it carries over into the 70s, into the 80s, into the 90s, and on and on and on. But there's never been, and I'm not the only person who said this, the perfect storm right now, because there's so many different things that are feeding into what's going on today. And it's almost like, okay, who took the notes from the last time? How do we take this and add to this to smooth this out? Am I right or am I wrong?
what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
The notes were taken they were left and placed in the Kerner Commission. It told us how not to get into this problem again.
Yeah.
It told us how to fix the problems of the past. You got to understand, we're still suffering, African Americans, when I say we, and whites as well, are suffering from post-traumatic slave syndrome. You got to understand, the Kerner Commission says that whites created the problem. They said that whites benefit from the problem, and they say that whites perpetuate the problem. So the reality of it is, if I fix the serial killer by just locking him up in a cell and never really trying to deal with his mental deficiency, I could keep him for 50 years and let him out. Guess what he's gonna do? He's gonna go right back to being a serial killer. So he's the problem. You have to work on him and try to work on whatever the ills that are causing him to do what he does. So I'm saying here in our country, the real fight now is not civil rights. It's not where you sit on the bus. It's not whether you can drink out of the same fountain as a white man. The problem that we have in our country right now is poverty. Poverty is our problem. And there are as many white people that are in poverty as it is black. And there's a small percentage of people in our country, 1% as they call them, that, have all of the wealth and are not allowing the common man to get a hold to a sufficient amount of the wealth. Our middle class is totally gone in this country. And the reality of it is, people with money in their pockets don't want to burn stores. They don't want to loot, they don't want to riot. They want to do exactly what me and you do: eat, drink, and be merry. So the reality of it is, America is going to have to find a way to do a redistribution of wealth. The problem that we have in this country is poverty. It's a lot of those other things that we talk about. But at the end of the day, it's poverty. The have too much, and have not can't get a hold of money.
I guess that's the whole perfect storm situation that we're in. And as a media director, Tasha, with what you have to do with the church, you are another mouthpiece, but you're a different mouthpiece.
And so I think that's why independent stations and networks are really important. We mentioned earlier in the conversation that there needs to be as much outrage. I would say there is. It's not covered. When I was in school and I went to journalism school, we started out with the first lesson: if it bleeds, it leads. So if there are a series of community groups that are doing things in the community to help combat the problem, to help with the ills you talked about that maybe people aren't getting at home, but nobody's covering it, then we begin to believe that nobody gives a crap, when that's not necessarily the case. So I think what both of you are saying are equally important, but I think it was important to note that there is an outrage. We just don't see it as prevalently because it's just not covered. So yes, what I see is a little different, and so that's why it's my job, it's yours job, it's the job of all of the people here to get these other stories out. A friend of mine posted the other day, he said he posted a picture of the CNN logo and a picture of the Fox logo. He said, if these are the only two places you're getting your news from, then you are highly misinformed.
Right.
Because
That's
everybody
true.
has their own agenda.
Right.
And so we have to get these stories out. Again, that's why this conversation is so important, so that people understand. So I'm on social media correcting people all the time when they hit with the, y'all don't care about black on black crime. That's not accurate. 80% of all crime is ethnicity on ethnicity. It's about proximity. So yeah, I'm not, what I look like, if I'm about to steal a car, I'm gonna go to Orland to do it, not with my name being Tasha and my hair looking like this. It's not gonna work out for me, right? So I'm gonna go where I'm close to people. So it's really important that that coverage is broadened.
And that's why we wanted to have this dialogue going on this morning, to have an open dialogue about it, but also to share some of the information for what we have here at the LRP network. I mean, it was brought up here about 3 weeks ago, and I made a small little mention of this on social media, heard some comments back and forth about, wow, it's about time that happens. But the whole idea was, there's a new breed. I should back up a second. We met with broadcasters back in May, and we spoke about what's going on in the world and what has to be done. What's our duty as broadcasters? I've been a broadcaster since 1982. I have always tried to be as fair and, not to steal a quote, but fair and balanced as possible. But after a while, you sit back and go, you know what? Everybody else is going to be doing that. We need to turn the camera around. We need to turn the microphone around. We need to be able to be an outlet for people who have something to talk about, but are not being allowed to talk about it in certain areas. And when it breaks down to it, Pastor Hunter, Pastor Clopton, Tasha, what it breaks down to is being able to give the young people a voice where they can have this open dialogue, have it with a number of different age groups all in one area, but at least to be able to talk about it without somebody standing over them saying, you can't talk about that. And I think that could be one of the big problems.
Right.
That is one of the biggest problems.
So right.
So that's why.
Yeah, you are so right.
I think the
I'm
more,
sorry.
no, you're right. And that's the problem with Zoom. Zoom is great, but it does get a little like that. But that's the dialogue that we really wanted to get across with this, is that that's what we do here at LRP. We want to be that other voice that the new generation of broadcaster can come to create this dialogue.
Yeah.
May I say this? The Kerner report specifically says that the media plays a major role
Yes.
Absolutely.
in the riots. They blame the media because the media carried the narrative,
That's right.
because they did not just allow the news to be put out there. They began to program the minds of the people. They wrote the narratives, and they did exactly what you're saying. In 1967 and 68, they only showed the parts of America that they wanted to show, and the way and the angles in which they decided it could be given. And they did it because the media was owned by the plutocrats, the 1%ers, the people that were trying to keep the status quo, which was not working for America at large. The large body of Americans did not feel that way. But if you watch the news, you thought everybody thought separate and unequal was okay. But everybody in America didn't feel that way then, and they don't feel that way now. But so media plays a big role in how we get rid of the hatred and the crime and the killing in our country. I mean, you can, at one point you go to the movies, and in one 45-minute to an hour movie, you see 9,000 people get killed.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You know, and then they glorify the guy that's doing the killing. So, you know, when do we show some movies with love? Some movies that says that, you know, where's the patriotic movies that we used to see where you know, everybody was one and it was about us being together. A lot of that has gone away, and they're writing the narrative for what they want us to believe and how they want us to live. And so what you do is really important, and it is major, turning the camera around and giving a different perspective of how the people that are affected by these laws that are being put on the books really live.
Yeah.
It's that dialogue that we've had not only with I don't want to say elders, but us, and I guess that's the nice way to say it.
Seasoned.
And seasoned, thank
Yes.
you. And the younger people that are getting into the industry, if you bring it up to certain broadcasters, they will look at you and go, why in the world would you do something like that? Why in the world would you offer something like that? And I guess the biggest thing has been because nobody had the guts to do it
Yes, that's the truth.
before
exactly.
we did it. You know, we got the guts to do it because this is information. Again, you find out about what happened in Chicago. The only reason you found out about it is because we live in Chicago. It wasn't brought up anywhere
It
else.
wasn't brought up anywhere else.
And it's this underlying layer of garbage
Yeah.
that blocks it, and that's got to be brushed off to the side. If there's more and more dialogue, you talked about, Pastor Hunter, a couple of weeks ago when we spoke about doing a panel discussion, and for us to be able to, my immediate response was, how do I get involved? How do we get the network involved? Because that is exactly what needs to be brought out. and not narrowcasted, broadcasted. It needs to be, that needs to be sent out. We only have a couple of minutes left, and I wish we had another hour. I really do. Actually, I wish I had another 2 that we could continue to discuss this. But Pastor Hunter, the invitation is out to you at any time to come back and join us on LRP Exclusive. If we would love to have you in person. Tasha brings coffee and donuts once in a while too, so it kind of works out good for everybody.
I cook, but you got to come to the house.
You got to come to the house.
Thank you, Tasha. Thank you.
But that offer is open to all 3 of you. We want to be able to do more of this, because again, it's so needed. But before we do leave, Pastor Hunter, I'd like to leave this up to you, because you've been so gracious in joining us. Any motivational and inspirational words that you have for us before we go?
Well, I've told my congregation and I've convinced myself that the church is essential, no matter how people try to make it seem that it wasn't, and that prayer is always in order. And since the pastor is on there and he's talking about it, I got to join in. I can't let him get on the conversation. That we must continue to keep our faith in these dark moments. Pandemics have not just started. We got to remember, we haven't forgotten about COVID-19. It is still real. It is still out there. And we still must be cautious and careful. The Bible warned us at one time to go home and lock our doors and wait until the pandemic was over. And so I'm saying to the people that if your doors are locked, don't allow your prayers to be locked. Continue to pray. Continue to believe in God. And remember, America is a great country, but it's great with your participation.
Very good. Pastor Hunter, Pastor Clopton, Tasha Clopton, you guys are all good friends. I'm glad that we were able to talk today, and we will talk more. This dialogue continues, and we will continue to present that dialogue as long as we're all hanging around here. So this window is always open to all of you. Thank you so much for your time. My name is Don Clark, and this has been LRP Exclusive on the LRP Network.